right. It's a little bit after 2:30. I'm just waiting to see as people are popping in. We are streaming. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully you're having a fabulous new year. And as we get started, just a couple of technical reminders. Just make sure that you are muted, and that way we're able to hear everything. The chat is open, and I probably would suggest you wait in probably about 2 or 3 minutes as people are coming in right now. If you have announcements or posts of upcoming things that's going on, you're free to put them in the chat. If people come in late, they won't be able to see what was posted beforehand. So that's just something that we've learned over the course of this Zoom era, I would say. And we are just waiting to see our chair join us. Leanna, I don't see her here yet.
I'm here.
Oh, here, okay. All right, so welcome, Leanna. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. I also want to, if you, all the board members, I see a lot of board members here as well. Leanna is our chair. We also have Barry Ross, who is our treasurer, joining us today, along with Jay Williams. We have also Kevin, Helene, Katie, Lisa. So you can see everybody in your wonderful little areas. Bev's here. Thank you for joining us as well. And I don't know, did I miss anyone else that is here? So thank you for joining us. And then if you want to also introduce Fred as well, Leanna.
Yes. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. So great to see all my fellow Fullertonians today and joining us together for our monthly collaborative meeting. Yes, as Deborah stated, Jason Phillips, myself, and Deborah had a chance to meet with Fred Young this morning and had a great conversation as to welcome him as a new city council member and to update him on the work that all of you and as part of our Fullerton Collaborative are doing in the city in partnership with the Fullerton Collaborative, and has been amazingly offering how and having conversations how the city council can also support the work that we're doing. So it was a great conversation. So Fred's here just to sign in and check out what we do. So thank you so much for joining us, Fred. And so on that note, we are going to turn the meeting over to Mr. Zoot Velasco. You know, I was just about to sign on and I was thinking about, I think Zoot, you were the one that invited me to the Fullerton Collaborative years ago for the first time. I was thinking about it. I think so. I think you were the first person that said, have you ever heard of the Fullerton Collaborative? And so, yeah, back when you were running the muck.
Yep.
So
running amok too sometimes.
Running amok too. So thanks to you, Zoot, right? And yes. So Zoot really educated me in the work of nonprofit work when we were trying to have our Dancing Angels become a nonprofit, and helped us through that process and helped us write our mission statement all those years ago. So just really introduced me personally, professionally into this whole world of nonprofits and just as such an amazing educator. So happy to have you here today, Zoot. Turning it over to you.
You look great, Leanna. I don't know, new makeup or something, but you look fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I got dressed up for all you guys today.
All right. Well, I am going to share my screen here. Can you see that, Deborah? All right. And let me go to my slides. All right, so today I was asked to talk a little bit about networks and partnerships, and some of you may know that I just completed a big research project this summer, which I just yesterday finished a new book on that's going to the publisher. Actually, yesterday went to the publisher, so it will be out this spring from Kindle Hall Publishing. And it's a book about the research project I did and all the best practices for growing from small to large during a recession. So just a little bit about that, about the Gianeschi Center that I run. We do the G3X conference and G3X conversations. We have trainings, podcasts, a YouTube channel. a podcast called 501c3 BS podcast, which is all about the BS in our industry and how to get past it. And let me find hold on a second here. I'm going to find the chat. Where's the chat at? There it is. I'm going to put a little link in the chat to our upcoming lectures that are coming up. We have one on a post-COVID world with funders and a lot of the kind of captains of industry in our field for Orange County. They're going to talk about what is coming on the horizon after the vaccines and after COVID. So we have that coming in February. We have a board development in March. And the story architect for NASA JPL is going to speak to us in April about how to use your story as part of your planning process, which is what NASA does. So we'll be talking about that in April. So that's just a little commercial for what we have coming up. I'm not going to do any more commercials than that. I just wanted to let you know what we're doing. Some of you may know me from Fullerton because I used to run the Muckenthaler for many years. And during the Great Recession at the Muckenthaler, I took over in 2007. We had a $400,000 income on a $500,000 budget and we're losing money hand over fist. And during the recession, we grew 400%. And I wanted to kind of find out when I became a researcher at my present job, how other organizations did during the recession, and those that grew from small to large. We grew to about 1.6 million, and by the end of the recession, and a lot of others grew as well. And I wanted to find out, for those of us who grew during the recession, what do we all have in common? And so I did this research study, and we identified people that I call the recession stars, that were organizations that grew from small to large. And I wasn't the only one in Fullerton. The other one in Fullerton is in this call right now. Kevin from Solidarity was one of the 29 recession stars. So kudos to Kevin for what they did during the recession. So what I researched was all of the organizations in Orange County and the Inland Empire. So that's San Bernardino and Riverside counties. And when you take those three counties together, they almost exactly match the demographics of the United States as a whole, in terms of rural and urban, in terms of ethnic demographics, in terms of poverty and wealth. When you take them together, those three counties as a whole, they very much look like the US. The only difference is we have a little higher Asian population than the rest of the US, but other than that, we're almost identical. So there were 6,450 organizations in those three counties that raised $13.5 billion a year during the recession. And 46% of all of that income went to just 4 hospitals. So just think about that. Almost half of all income went to just 4 hospitals. And it used to be, there was a study done in 2010 where it went to 20 organizations, most of them hospitals, but a lot of those hospitals consolidated. So, I mean, that just kind of goes to show you how much money in our country goes to healthcare. So 11% of the organizations were over $1 million, but they accounted for 94% of all the revenue. And 74% of the organizations were under $200,000 annual revenue, but they accounted for only 3% of the revenue. So you can see how kind of lopsided our field is. And when you take these numbers against national numbers, they hold up. It's almost identical nationally and statewide as it is locally. The numbers aren't that different. And what that means is basically there's about 15% of organizations that are between $200,000 a year income and $1 million a year income. And generally, once you get to the $1 million a year mark, you're going to be okay. You're going to survive. You're going to have staff. You're going to be able to raise funds. You're going to be able to do fine. But when you're under 200,000, people languish there for years and never grow. And some people don't want to grow. Some people just don't know how to grow. But there's only that 15% that do that growth. And those are the 15% that are really, kind of figuring things out, how to grow from small to large. And so a lot of my research was on that group. And when you look at the total organizations, you can see that during the recession, most of them were underwater. So only the group in the yellow there were growing. And of that little ice cube, those 207 organizations were the only ones who were growing by a lot. And of those 207, only 29 were able to grow from small to large and continue to grow after the recession was over. So what I focused on were those 29 organizations, because a large majority of the organizations that grew during the recession ended up failing after the recession was over. They might have got a big influx of growth and then it didn't sustain itself. So only 29 were able to sustain it. And of those 29, Solidarity in Fullerton was one. So I wanted to point them out because they're our Fullerton recession star. So here's what happened. 51% of those that grew during the recession ended up not being able to sustain it. They went back to the 2008 numbers that they were at before. 14% went completely defunct. And there were 7% that started large to begin with. And I would have actually expected that to be larger percentage. There were 14% that grew significantly, but they never grew large enough to be over $1 million. And there was that 14% of them, 29 organizations that did grow from small to large and sustained it, and those are the recession stars. So what did those 29 recession stars have in common? Well, 69% of all their income was earned income. There were 69% of those that made all of their money, almost 100% of their income from earned income. And I think one of the things that we get caught up in as organizations is what my friend Jan Masaoka calls the fundraising industrial complex, where there's professional fundraisers that convince us that we have to spend all of our time, energy, and money getting big donors and getting individual donors and getting grants. And the fact of the matter is that most money in our field is earned income, and we should be spending more time on those earned income streams. So earned income would include fees for service, like the group in orange, contract fees, like the group in yellow, or social enterprise, like the group in green. And Solidarity would fall into that category. Now, in terms of contracts, there's a difference between contracts and grants. Grants are usually for a year to 3 years, and then the grant is done, and you can't get it again. Whereas a contract you can get every year because you're doing a service on behalf of the government or another agency that they would have to do otherwise. So I just wanted to point out that difference. Of the 31% that were traditional organizations, at least half of their income came from earned income as well. So it's important to keep that in mind. Now, when you look at national statistics, 73% is earned income nationally. So that 50% is the blue, and the green is government contracts. That's 23%. So you put that together as 73%. So what we have here is not that different from the national figures. And this is from 2014. There's a reason for that. One is that's during just after the recession when I got these figures, but also 2014 was the last year they kept earned income as a statistic because they're a fundraising agency. They don't want to show you earned income. So they don't want you thinking about that. They want you thinking about fundraising. So I point that out because I think it's startling in our industry that we worry so much as small organizations about fundraising, and fundraising is really designed for large organizations that can afford fundraising. We really should be concentrating on how we develop our earned income streams. So the findings that I found of the 29 organizations and what they had in common is that every single one of them had some kind of leadership training. And at the Gianeschi Center, we do the only leadership training program for our sector for Orange County, which is the Gianeschi Fellowship training that we do. But everybody had either from an outside source, an MBA program, or even a church program had some kind of leadership training. Every single one of them had earned income streams. And for most of our groups, most of their income was earned income. And all of them had a really deep network and credited strategic partnerships with their success. None of them had a professional fundraiser. I should say one out of the 29 had a professional fundraiser. Most of them did not. So when I work as a consultant, people often will kind of come and ask me to help them grow. And they're doing this, what I call the pyramid of doom, where they see a need that they want to address, and they approach that need in kind of a paternalistic way, that I'm going to come there and I'm going to solve those people's problems for them. And they're going to come in, and if only I can just get the money, I'm going to solve those problems. And they kind of get stuck at the funding phase, and they never go any farther than that. And they're just always trying to raise money and never really doing the work. Whereas the people who were the recession stars, they did what I call the circle of success. And it says 6 steps and it should be 7. That's a typo on my part. Sorry about that. But you know, what they see a need, the first thing they do is not even try to develop an organization. The first thing they did was try to gather people together to fill the need. So, hey, you know what? One of our people was fighting a disease that her son had. And she's like, I just want to find all the people who are parents of this disease, that it's a childhood disease. Let's see if I can get all these parents together and we can figure something out as a group. And then because of that, started leading that group. Solidarity is probably one of the best examples of this, where they moved to a neighborhood that they wanted to help. They wanted to be part of the neighborhood. And in the process of being part of it, they gathered allies and then decided to lead. And then through that leadership, developed a plan. Through the plan, started doing the work, which involved a lot of in-kind donations early on, and then later earned income. And then told people about what they were doing, which caused them to, you know, attract funders and more partners and more gather more allies, and then grow and get bigger. And this is what really works in terms of growing an organization from small to large, especially in a recession and a pandemic and the things that we're dealing with now, is this kind of a networking situation where you develop a network, you develop allies, you gather them together, and you're not looking for funding, you're looking for resources. And there's a huge difference. We're one of the richest countries in the world. We have tons of resources. We don't have a lot of funding. So if you stop looking for funding and start looking for resources, you're much more likely to be successful. So I think a lot of people misunderstand networks. They don't understand them, and they don't understand the importance of them. Because it's funny, because if you say, oh, you have to be on a social network online, everybody knows, oh yeah, I got to be on a social network. That's important to my growth. But they don't understand that in real life networks, IRL networks, are just as important as social networks, if not more important. And in fact, I've been interviewing influencers on social networks for my marketing class. I've been having influencers come in and speak both at my conference and my marketing class. And every single one of them says that they've developed their online network from their in-person networks first. So it's really important to start with in-person networks. And you have to understand the theory of structural holes. So here's the thing that, you know, like Solidarity did. They probably did it before they even knew what they were doing, right, Kevin? And that is that, you know, you're that red dot. You're Solidarity. You're that red dot right there. And Solidarity gets involved with a church group, and they get involved with the neighborhood group, and they get involved with small businesses in the neighborhood, and they get involved with the parks. And each time they're developing a network, and they got involved with the Fullerton Collaborative, each time they're developing a network, they are becoming the connector between those networks. So that church group maybe never talked to Fullerton Collaborative before, and Fullerton Collaborative may not have talked to other people in that neighborhood before, but because they all knew Tommy and Kevin, they were connected. And that connection does two things. One, it makes those networks stronger, because those networks are now talking to each other and they're not duplicating services. And so by doing that, those networks all being connected makes them stronger, and anyone who's not connected to that network becomes weaker, and those networks become more powerful in the community. And then the red dot that connects them becomes more powerful, because they're filling a structural hole, because now there is no structural hole. And because they're the filler of that hole, they have the most power of anyone in the network. So it gave Tommy and Kevin more power in their networks because they were the connector. If somebody wanted to figure out how to reach these kids that they were working with, they did it through them, and that gave them power. And so we often forget that we become more powerful when we connect to others. And I'll have people, I'll tell people, hey, you should join my Rotary Club, or you should join the Fullerton Collaborative, or you should join the chamber, or whatever. And they'll say, oh, I joined, I was there 3 times and I didn't get anything out of it. But the fact is they didn't put anything into it either. So when you are joining a network, you have to not be about yourself, but to be about that network. And if you are about that network, you will end up helping yourself and your organization in the process. And Leanna is a great example of that because, I don't know, I would imagine that her networking has helped her business incredibly, but not because she's ever proselytized her business. It's because just her being Leanna makes people want to go to her business, because she's the connector. So one of my social influencer people had this acronym called LEAD. And I think LEAD is a great acronym for both in-person real life networks as well as online networks. So you start out when you join a network by just listening actively. You find out what's going on, who people are, you get to know them. Then you start to engage evenly. You get to know everyone in the network. You don't spend all your time with just one person. You get to know everybody. Then you start to add value. And you do that by bringing quality and consistent things to the network. Right now, I'm speaking to you all on something. I'm not getting paid for this. This is not a network that does that. And I'm doing it because I'm hoping to add value in that you all will support what I'm doing, and I support what Deborah's doing, and I support what the network's doing. That's part of LEAD. And then you develop relationships within that network, and those relationships will eventually turn into either a client, a volunteer, a partner, or an investor. But every single person in this network is a potential one of these for me. And every single person in this network is a potential one of these for you. And anywhere I go in the city, any network I join, every single person is one of these things in my head until they prove not to be. So everybody I meet, I'm thinking, are they a client? Are they a volunteer? Are they a partner? Are they an investor? And if none of those pan out, then that's fine. They might become a friend, and a friend is good too. But I don't think, I'm the type of person that sees everything as positive. I don't meet too many people I don't like. I generally like everybody. And so everybody becomes something for me. And if it's not one of those, it's just a friend. But what many people do is, they apply for funding, they get funding, then the funding ends, and then they need funding again. And they have nothing to show for it except whatever it is that they did, maybe a little bit of a track record. But when you're part of networks, what happens is you need resource, you gather allies, you develop the network, the community provides resources, and the next time you need resources, you have this whole network of people behind you. And so you're not at the same place as you are when you're just looking for funding. When you're looking at resources, you're not at the same place as looking for funding. You have this deep network of resources behind you. And I tell people when I say, hey, you should join my Rotary Club, I tell them, in my Rotary Club, you're a phone call away from anything you need in the city. And that's absolutely true. But I could say that of Fullerton Collaborative too. I'm one phone call away from anything I need in town. And so I'm not at the same place that I would be if I wasn't networking. That's the importance of a network. So when you're looking at funding, which is more effective? Someone coming up to you, if you're a funder, and saying, I have an idea that'll change the world. Are you going to help me? Give me some money for it? Or someone coming up to you that you love and know, like Leanna coming up to me and saying, hey, this is my friend. We've been changing the world together. You want to see what we're doing? That is much more effective. And you can't do that if you're not part of networks. So when you're looking at potential partnerships with people you meet in your networks, you're going to have potential funders, but also small community-oriented businesses, which helped Solidarity grow a lot. Large corporations with corporate giving programs, schools and universities. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with interns from schools and universities and volunteers from service programs, government, faith-based, other charities, students, retired people from senior centers. We had 600 volunteers at the Muck every year when I was there. I think they probably do the same or more now. I mean, Farrell's done an amazing job. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more there now. But you know, a lot of those were volunteers that were retired people looking to do more. And there's lots of great places around North Orange County where you can find retired people that want to give back and do more. So what makes a good partnership? Well, if you're talking about a true strategic partnership, it has to benefit both partners. There has to be some benefit to the community and your mission, and shared responsibility, shared resources, no territorial disputes. And the way that you do that is through a contract. Make sure that every time you have a strategic partnership, you have at least a letter of agreement in an email that's written, where you say, this is what I understand each partner is going to do. Can you agree to this? And if they say yes, you have it in writing. And then if there is miscommunication, you can go back and say, well, remember when we wrote this out? And oh, okay, yes, you're right. That was my responsibility. Because a lot of times what happens is we don't write things down and people forget what they agreed to. So you need to make sure you write things down. So if you're looking at resources and not money, then you're taking your mission and looking at their agenda and seeing where there's common interest. So when I meet people in networks, you know, they'll say, what is it you do? And, you know, I will tell them, well, I'm helping to grow small organizations into large organizations, making the whole community stronger. That's what I do at the Gianeschi Center. Oh, well, you know, that's interesting because I always thought about starting a nonprofit. So right away now I know there's a connection. And if my mission was, hey, I'm solving Alzheimer's by helping fund research for Alzheimer's Foundation. Oh, my mother had Alzheimer's. There's a connection. Oh, I run the Muckenthaler and we have a great ceramics program. Oh, I did ceramics and it changed my life. There's a connection. So I was with a client one time when I was a consultant who ran a domestic violence shelter. We were at a restaurant. Restaurateur came over and said, how is everything? And I said, oh, your salsa is great. Your homemade limeades are fantastic. This is the head of your local domestic violence shelter. And he said, oh, my parents were, you know, I grew up in domestic violence. And there was a connection. So when you hear that connection, when somebody, because our natural inclination when we meet people is to try and figure out where we connect. Everybody does that. And so when you hear that connection, now you can start placing them. Are they a potential partner, a volunteer, a funder, a client? And you can say, would you like to come do a site visit? You know, if they're a potential client, why don't you come by? We can help you with, you know, some of your needs. So you can figure out where you have a common interest and how that relates to your mission in a way that you can facilitate that. And what I always tell people is, we don't beg for money for a living. That's not what we do. What we do is we take people who want to give or want to be part of the community, and we give them an avenue to do that. That's a whole different thing. And again, if you're thinking resources and not funding, that's what you're thinking. So when we talk about strategic partnerships, you can have alliances for funding, you can have alliances for geography, for mission, or for marketing. And most people only think about funding. But even with funding, people miss the boat. So for example, I run a small organization. We're not $1 million organization. And there's a grant out, but the grant, you have to be a larger organization to apply for this grant. But I might be able to partner with another small organization and together we could apply. Or I might be a strategic partner of a larger organization and we could apply under their umbrella. So these are the kinds of things you think of with a funding alliance. With a geographic alliance, the Muckenthaler was in Fullerton when I was there, and well, still there, and we wanted to do some programs in Anaheim. There was a lot of money being thrown into Anaheim for programs, and the Museo, which is in Anaheim, did not have arts education programs. So we partnered together and we got some of the Anaheim money for arts education programs at the museo that we provided from our staff at the Muckenthaler, and that was a geographic alliance to help us spread out in a geography that was within our purview, but we helped another organization that didn't have the facility for it. A marketing alliance. So we wanted to get the 18% of Fullerton that's Korean into our center, and we partnered with the Korean Cultural Center to do that. They wanted to market Korea to white patrons that might come to Korea, people who are non-Korean that might come to Korea and see Korea as tourist destination. So they were happy to come and do shows at the Muckenthaler because we had a large non-Korean contingent, but we also wanted to bring in the Korean contingent and do real Korean shows. And so they brought shows from Korea to put on our stage to help us with that. That was a marketing alliance. And then mission alliances, anytime your mission comes together. And a great example of that is our quinceañera program that we did with shelters, where we created a quinceañera for shelter girls who wouldn't get one. And there was no money in that. Nobody made any money in that. That was all about just getting people together and doing something good for the community that needed to be done. And the fact that we did that, I'm sure, helped all organizations that were part of it with funders, because they could see how we worked together in Fullerton, and that was a good thing. But it wasn't about funding, it was just about mission. So, you know, Crittenden and the Muckenthaler had a long partnership together, and that was one that I started when I was there. And we started with a mission alliance that became a funding alliance, because they found that when our arts programs ran for their foster youth that were English was a second language, they found that they learned English twice as fast when our arts programs ran. So they put us under a federal grant as an English language program. So it became a funding alliance, but it started as a mission alliance. And there's the quinceañera program that we just talked about. That was a mission alliance. For funding alliances, we did a funding alliance with Chalk Hospital. We did one with Colette's to provide weddings at the Muckenthaler as a social enterprise business. We had, anytime that you have contracts coming to you, or a program partner, a business partner, social enterprise partner, all of those are good funding alliances. Geographic Alliance was the Museo program I just talked about, and the Cultural Center Alliance for marketing that I talked about. And we did another one like that for Latino programs as well. Excuse me, Latinx programs. I'm old, I'm still learning. But there you go. So I'm running low on time, right? I need to end quickly. So getting funds through partnerships, you can do it through earned income, through contracts and partners, programs with partners. You can do it through grant sponsorship, which is always better with a partner. Grants love it when you partner. Through individual donations, cross-pollinating with partners, and then social enterprise, doing business with a partner. And that's our wedding business with Colette's there in the picture. So I think this is kind of reiterating what we already talked about, so I'm not going to do that. Where do you find partners? In your networks. And everything I said about networking applies to social media networks as well. Through board members, through existing partners, and I always suggest creating a resource map. And a resource map is basically where you identify potential partners and map them out on a literal map. And I find that useful because sometimes you can find where there's deserts happening, where there's nothing going on, and there's a real need for partnership. And then keeping that mindset of looking for resources and making social impact rather than looking for funding. Okay, that's it. And I'll turn it back to you, Deborah, unless there's any questions.
Do you have any questions? I don't think we saw any come up I think there was one early in the chat. I can't remember.
Yeah, Bev had a question. And
Yes.
if you want to go ahead and address that, you could do that in the chat. I'm just looking at the time. We probably need
Yeah.
to be moving on. So if you have any other questions, feel free to put it in the chat. What an amazing story and research that you're sharing, Azut, and I really appreciate it as we apply what we've learned in the past to what's going on currently right now, and how do we, as the 2020 word, pivot in this new year, and really how do we work together to support that?
I'm also going to put the link for our podcast in the chat, but you can get it wherever you get podcasts. And we're going to have in the next season a lot about this research and what we found from it in our podcast feed.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Zoot. Okay, we are going to now turn the meeting over to Mr. Barry Ross. He is on our Fullerton Collaborative Board and an amazing resource for us during these difficult times, especially with the conversations around the vaccines. So, Barry, we appreciate all this information you're able to share with us.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. And I just want to say that the coming of the vaccine is an opportunity for us to get back to normal. And so I think we each have a role to play in helping people accept the vaccine as it rolls out. I'm sure you have seen in the news that the initial rollout has been somewhat disappointing. We're not getting the vaccine in enough people's arms, but I think we're going to see that change, this month and going forward. I'm going to share briefly what I understand the current plan to be for Orange County. It is evolving and changing as we speak. So, but it's based on the federal CDC plan and the California Department of Public Health plan. The uh, first phase, there are actually, there's phase one that has 3 phases within it. And within each phase, there are tiers, which makes it very complicated. But where we are now is in phase 1A, which is involving healthcare workers in tier 1, community health workers, public health workers, clinic staff in tier 2, and dental clinic staff, lab and pharmacy staff in tier 3. All of those tiers are now open for vaccine. In February, the county is projecting to move to phase 1B, which has 2 tiers. The first tier are those for individuals 75 and older, and those who are high risk based on their occupation, such as teachers, childcare workers, emergency workers, food service, and agriculture workers. And then later on, maybe in February or later, would be phase 1B tier 2, which are individuals 65 to 74, and then those at risk in other high risk occupations, and those that are in congregate settings, prisoners, homeless. I think we're going to see some changes with that. And we're starting to also see some vaccinations for older people in the very high risk neighborhoods already in Orange County. After those groups are vaccinated, then we're going to go to phase 1C, which are people both anyone 50 to 64 or people 16 to 64 with underlying healthcare conditions, and then other industries that have some risk and that work with the public. The important things to think about are that in order for this to be successful, anywhere from 70 to 80% of the population has to be vaccinated. And the other thing to think about right now is the vaccine is not being given to those under the age of 16 because the research studies have not yet been done on children. So we don't know if it's safe or effective in children. Some of the plans that the county has is starting out with traditional providers. So for example, our hospital is, we've given out over 3,700 vaccines since I think the third week of December to our staff, our physicians, to some of our medical office staff that work with COVID patients and home health staff. The county is planning on standing up to 5 mass vaccination sites for the general public. They're calling them super pods. I believe the first one will be in Anaheim. And Deborah got a email from Supervisor Chafee's wife who works for him, asking if we could help recruit some volunteers for the first site. So I think Deborah was going to put in the chat some information about how you could sign up for volunteering. I know I signed up, and it's run through 10C. And I see there's a question in the chat about, is the vaccine recommended for those that have had COVID? And it is recommended for people that have had COVID because the data so far does not say how long your antibodies will be strong after you have COVID. So it's not necessary to have it right away after you have COVID. You do have a period of time where you have some immunity, but we don't know how long that lasts. In terms of how, there's another question about as an employer. I think that there will be a process for employers to register, but they haven't set that up yet because they're not at that phase. Definitely, it will be easier for employers to encourage their staff to take it. Now, mostly no employers, including the hospitals, have made this mandatory up at this point. It's still voluntary. And that's why it's really, really important that we as trusted organizations get the word out to our clients, to our staff, that we set the example. We get the vaccine, we let people know we got the vaccine so that they're willing to do it themselves. There's been some information in the newspaper that even among healthcare workers, we're not seeing the uptake that we want. And so people are going to look at that. And so we're doing our part, I know at St. Jude, to really encourage our staff to have the vaccine. Some of the other things that the county is looking at are small community vaccination sites called local pods, and if necessary, what they call mobile strike teams that will be a van with a smaller volume to reach very high risk populations in neighborhoods that are hesitant. And we do know that, at least from surveys, that some of the high-risk populations are more hesitant to get the vaccine. Some of the undocumented population is concerned that the data that they have to provide could be shared with the federal government and used by immigration, which is not the case, but you do have to share data when you register, and that's a concern. The county mass vaccination site, which is being run by the healthcare agency, is they're currently partnering with the Orange County Fire Authority, and they want to complete all vaccinations by July 4th. I think that's very ambitious. I hope that happens, but that is their goal. They're going to be staffing the first pod site, but they really are going to need volunteers, both clinical and support staff, 7 days a week to really reach the thousands of people every day that they want to vaccinate. I just want to say that, in some ways, the pandemic is somewhat hidden from people unless they've been personally affected and they know somebody. But I can tell you, as a hospital provider, we have over 200 COVID patients in the hospital now. And that number went up from about 18 patients a few months ago. And these patients are very sick. We have, I think, over 60 COVID patients in our ICU. It is very serious. And so it's really important that people get the vaccine because this is the only way we're going to get out of the pandemic. So I would be glad to answer any questions. I see there was another question about low immune systems. I know we're giving it to our employees that are immunocompromised. I think if you're concerned, you could ask your primary care doctor about it. But I think the philosophy is that it is, if you have a poor immune system and you get COVID, that will have a higher risk than getting the vaccine if you have immune issues. So we are giving it out. There was a question about the temporary facility that was built in front of the hospital. So there's two different tents in front of the hospital. There's a smaller group of small tents that is being used sort of by our ER for patients who really don't have serious needs, and they could be treated and released fairly quickly. And then there's a much larger tent that's called a field hospital, and that tent is could accommodate up to 50 inpatients. We're not using it right now. We are very fortunate at St. Jude because of the state seismic regulations. We had to build new buildings that you see in front of the hospital, but we kept our old buildings, even though the state did not allow us to use them for inpatient use. We were using them for offices, outpatients, and other use. So the state has allowed us to use some of those units again for inpatients. So we have converted several of those units now, and they are full of patients. So we're very lucky that we have that capacity. There was another question here about if someone gets COVID between the two doses, do they still get the second dose? They do need to get 2 doses. And again, they could talk to their provider about the timing of when they would get the second dose. It may not be as critical to get it within the either 21 days for Pfizer or 28 days, but they do need to get the second dose. It's recommended. I have a good friend who's scared of the vaccine. What do I tell them? Well, the studies show the vaccine is safe. I think what you could tell people is that there is an increasing likelihood right now to get COVID. And if you get COVID, you could get very sick. If you get the vaccine, you may have a day or two where you don't feel great. Some people do get fever or chills, or they may get some aches, and it usually goes away in a day or two. So the question for them is, would they rather have a day or two of some discomfort? Maybe they get it, maybe they don't have that discomfort, or would they rather have the possibility that they could get very, very sick or even die? I mean, that's the reality. We are seeing younger and younger people getting very sick. So it may be scary, but I think as more people share that they've gotten the vaccine, they've been okay, and why they got the vaccine, I think that will help. And then how to avoid long lines at the large pods. You know, I don't know what the system will be, but I'm sure they'll have social distancing. I don't know if any of them will be drive up. I know they will probably be by appointment. And so one way they can manage that is by managing the number of people at an appointment. When someone becomes eligible and their tier is active, how do they go get the vaccine? So again, if you go on the ochealthinfo.com website, they have all the information. They're updating who's eligible to get the vaccine, and they will have the sites up and the way to make an appointment. There's a software that you have to register with to make the appointment. It's not up yet for most people. So, you know, but you can go on the website and you can, you'll be able to, you know, learn how to register for the vaccine, where to go, and all of that. It's just not up yet. Let's see. I think I answered all the questions. Is there anything else that anybody has? We want to, in February, we really want to talk more because hopefully the vaccine will start becoming more available of how we can help all get the word out. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barry. All of that was great information. We appreciate it so, so much. Okay, before we wrap up, we're going to do our committee updates from our 4 different areas of work that we do most of our work in. Can we start with Christian or Bev or both for our Next Gen? I know you had a meeting last week, so I'd love to hear what's going on with our Next Gen Youth Empowerment.
Of course. Bev, can I turn it over to you?
Yeah, sorry,
Thank
my
you.
mute was not unmuting, which I'm sure that people would have loved that to happen in my household. Hello, everyone. Thank you for that wonderful explanation of the vaccines, Barry, and then Zoot, that was a very good presentation on nonprofits, so thank you very much for that. We did meet on January 5th, our Next Gen group. We had a small but mighty group attend this month, and we talked and shared what we were doing and how the holidays, how our groups were affected in the holidays, how we had gone forward. And we also talked about our challenges as a group and maybe the commonality of what we see the challenges going forward for our groups. And I think that we all agreed that getting people engaged and recruiting new volunteers and new resources and new people was the biggest challenge that we were having. And I think that goes back to, everyone goes back to COVID, and you can't bring in new people, or you're trying not to bring in as many in-person volunteering or in-person engagement. So I think it's very hard for people to continue to include people and get them engaged in our organizations. And then we all just shared, and I don't know if it's going to be in the chat, but our colleges shared what's going on with them. We had some other resources that were available to our clients and our kids that we shared. And with that, we will be meeting again on the first Tuesday of February, which is February the 2nd. And if anyone would like to attend, Christian could put up his information in the chat. Feel free to give him a call or reach out, and we will add you to our list of invitees. 10 o'clock, February 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bev and Christian. Okay, next we have Peter, who's going to give us an update on our Move More, Eat Healthy initiative in the city.
Hello, everyone. So quickly, so as you guys may recall, in the past meetings, we've talked about how in collaboration with St. Jude Medical Center and the entire collaborative, we launched our Holiday Home Workout Challenge during the months of November and December in order to try to increase physical activity throughout the city of Fullerton. Studies have actually, as I've mentioned in the past, keep demonstrating that physical inactivity keeps increasing as a result of the pandemic. Worldwide, there's been about a 30 to 50% reduction in steps based on the tracking of different cell phones that people have. And so with that, I did want to share the winners of the Holiday Home Workout Challenge with you all. We had 3 prizes. Our third place winner received a $50 gift card to Target. Second place received a $100 gift card to Target, and first place received a $150 gift card to Target. And so we're gonna go ahead and start with our third place winner, who was Tobias Gim from the city of Fullerton. And so I'll go ahead and just share the first few seconds of it so you guys could kind of see what was some of the content that was submitted to Move More Eat Healthy for this challenge. And so that was part of the challenge, submitting their holiday home workout during the holidays. So I'll go ahead and play it.
Hi, my name is Tobias Gim and I'm in 4th grade. My favorite sport to do is hockey. I like to do hockey because I can play with my mom or by myself, and it's very healthy for me, and it's also very fun.
Okay, so that is our third place winner, Tobias Gim. Our second place winner was Tyler and Braden, and I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Tyler. Hi, my name is Braden. So we're here for the Holiday Workout Challenge. And our favorite fitness is jiu-jitsu. And the reason why it's jiu-jitsu is because number one, you get self-defense. Number two, you get a great workout. Number three, you have a lot of fun. Come on, guys, let's go. 3.
Shall we begin?
4. Hope you had fun.
Let's begin.
So that is our second place winners. And then finally, our first prize winners. So the placings were actually based on how much content was contributed by the different participants. And so our first place winner, Aura, and her daughter Giselle and their family actually contributed about 15 posts. And so that's why they were the grand prize winners. So I'll go ahead and share it. So those were our winners for the Holiday Home Workout Challenge. And with that, with the start of 2021, I did want to introduce our new challenge for the start of 2021, which you see the flyer for on here. So at the beginning of January, we did launch our New Year, New Healthy You Challenge. So on behalf of Move More Healthy, we're continuing to provide in virtual physical activity classes, but also sharing daily tips and challenges for the city of Fullerton. So with this campaign, not only are they being asked to, in order to enter step number 1, commit to our engaging in more physical activity a day, but also number 2, submitting content where they actually complete the different tasks and challenges that we are sharing with the community via Instagram, Facebook, and our website. And then finally, step number 3 to participate in this challenge is we're asking members of the community to post photos or videos of them completing these tips and challenges, but also tagging 2 friends in order to continue to increase the importance and awareness of physical activity. Again, our grand prize winner for this challenge, we do have another $150 gift card, and it's open to all age groups. So if you know any members of the community that you work with, there's no limit as to which age group there's no limit to the age group. And this challenge will be going on from January until the end of February. But that's about it. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Peter. I just want to also just, I'm putting in the chat the next meeting. You're welcome to join us, anyone here on the 27th, that Wednesday at 10 o'clock. You could send me an email and I put that in the chat to join me.
And then Debbie, do you have quick updates for homeless and education?
Yes, a very quick update regarding the homeless. We are moving forward. I know that there has been a lot of need right now in the city. And as mentioned at the last collaborative meeting, we have we've been able to gather over the years a fund that is called Whatever It Takes, or the WIT Fund. And so we're releasing those funds. We're working with our partners in the collaborative and identifying families that are in need and helping them actually helping them stay in their homes. And so we will be announcing that and working with those individuals as we move forward. And then lastly, with our education, I know Barry's on the phone along with other partners, but as a reminder for those that are invited or interested in working in the Education Committee, we actually have a follow-up meeting of remapping the city of Fullerton. So we're looking at how the census is broken up in regards to the early developmental index, which is looking at children and their families for the early preschool and transitioning to kindergarten. So if you're interested in joining us in the remapping of the EDI, that will be this week on Thursday, the 14th at 1 o'clock. And then you can send either myself or Barry Ross an email, and we can help you get connected in doing that as well. And if there's anything else, Barry, you wanted to add, feel free.
I just want to say that with Marilee Cosgrove moving on, Trang Lee has replaced her, and she's interested in seeing how we can restart the committee that we kind of put on pause. So I have a call with her right after this to talk about that.
That's great news. Thank you so much, Barry.
Excellent.
Well, with that, Debbie, I think we're all wrapped up, right?
We are, yes. And if anybody has individuals interested in joining, we always are taking in membership. And then if you have events that you want me to share with the community, please make sure to email them as well. We really appreciate everything that you're doing. We'll see next month. We'll have a second Monday in February. That is, I think, a holiday for the schools, but we are still meeting as a collaborative. So thank you, everyone. Leanna?
Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us, and we really look forward to seeing you next month. Please reach out to us in the meantime if you need support in any way. We're here for you. Thank you, everybody.